You're probably going to want to adjust your audio greatly while watching this video, and you might not even want to be using headphones. The Game of Thrones Season 8 trailer is here. I am literally sweating. I'm wearing deodorant and somehow my sweat is going through it. This trailer was epic. I was shaking. Let me rephrase that. I'm still shaking. I've seen this thing 10 times and the hype has not worn down. Before watching this video, make sure you check the link down below in the description and go and watch that trailer a few times. In this video, I want to go through a shot-by-shot breakdown really quickly, and then I want to share my thoughts as well as a few spoilers that may have been confirmed from this Game of Thrones Season 8 trailer. This video will contain spoilers, so like always, here's your sign. Before we get started, please slap a like on this video as the like goal is going to be 1,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then this is the most important part. Make sure you have your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this. Oh wait, I can't even say long night because it's almost over. Throughout the remaining few weeks before Game of Thrones Season 8 starts. Okay, so the very opening scene of the trailer is Arya running through the halls of Winterfell. She's clearly wounded, and the way that she's breathing makes it seem as though she's not running from one enemy, but from multiple enemies. The way that her breaths are set apart, it sounds like she's been running for quite a while, to be honest. Her scenes are intercut with a shot of Davos, and this appears to be right before the battle starts, and then we get another shot of Varys in the crypts. I tried to freeze frame it to see who's behind him in the crypts. The only person I could positively make out was Sansa, and it looks as though she's sitting right below the statue of Ned. Those three scenes are all sort of narrated by Arya mentioning that death has many faces. And she mentions how she looks forward to seeing another face of death. Now it's funny because it looks like that final scene that they show of her when she's actually saying this is before she's actually met the army of the dead. And the scene of her running with the bloody eyebrow, that's clearly after she's met the army of the dead. Now, Arya has mentioned even recently as the EW article from yesterday, she's been training the longest. She is one character who has since literally the very third episode of the first season has been training. Now obviously Jon Snow and all the warriors are doing this as well, but Arya's been trained in multiple fighting styles. The one thing she's never been a part of is a battle. She's never been a part of a type of fight where you have more than one enemy. And I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but there's actually shots of her later on in the trailer swinging around a stick, which is very similar to the fighting style she learned down in Braavos when she was temporarily blind fighting the waif. The next shot we get in the trailer is that of the Golden Company. Now this is something that we've all long been waiting for. For almost 2 years, Cersei mentions in Season 7, Episode 7 that she's got the Golden Company coming over. They're sort of her last straw, and they rumor to have elephants. Now I did not see any elephants in this trailer, but one thing I did notice is that in the comment section on the YouTube video, people were saying, oh look, Euron's got some new armor. Nope, that's not true. When you freeze frame it, you can actually see Euron walking away from this dude. This is the leader of the Golden Company, Harry Strickland, and he's actually played by an actor from the show called The Last Kingdom. And in the next part of the trailer, things really start to pick up. We get a voiceover dub from Bran, and he's saying everything you did brought you here. And then we get, quick shots of Tormund and Beric and Dolorous Edd, and they appear to be walking into a room. I don't really think this is Castle Black. I think the three of them have survived and will make it to Winterfell. This could be the three of them entering the crypts of Winterfell, making sure it's safe for Sansa and for Varys and the characters who don't swing a sword to go and hide out. We then get a quick shot of Bran and Sam, and it appears to be Sam entering the room. I think this may be right as they tell Jon Snow his true lineage, and I do think that that's going to happen early, not just because the leaks have suggested it, but also there's another shot in the trailer of Jon Snow longingly staring at a weirwood tree. And just as a warning, I'm about to quickly mention some spoilers. Skip ahead about 30 seconds if you don't want to hear those. According to a new leak that's been floating around on Reddit, supposedly when Jon Snow finds out his lineage, it's not like a one-on-one conversation like we've all predicted. It's actually Bran announcing it to everyone in Winterfell. Jon Snow is not who you think he is. He's the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. And this doesn't really give Jon the chance to cope with it because everyone who's present in that room, which is literally the entire cast apart from Cersei, knows about his true parentage. The person who leaked this information also said that the whole situation is pretty humorous, and it's one of the funniest moments in Game of Thrones. Then picking it back up with a trailer here, right after we get the shot of Sam and Bran, there is a scene of Cersei, and right as Bran says where you belong, we see Cersei looking out over the balcony. This is most likely when the Golden Company and Euron arrive back from Essos. And then we get to my favorite part of the trailer. Well, okay, let me take that back. One of my favorite parts of the trailer. We see this image of this child who's climbed up on top of the tree so that they can can see all of Daenerys' army as her and Jon Snow arrive in the north. This is very reminiscent from the very first episode, when King Robert arrives in the north. Both Bran and Arya go out to get a closer glimpse of the king. This trailer has appeared to flip that around. This appears to be some random northern kid, and he's just as excited as Bran was when Robert first arrived in the kingdom. I think there's going to be a sense of dread, even though we as the show watchers know that Daenerys is a good guy, and she would never harm the north unless they did something to outreach against her. And it's honestly not the north that I'm afraid for, it's for Daenerys. There may be some random person who decides to do something rash, and maybe they get burned up and eaten by a dragon. Now, the chances of that happening are pretty slim, but I do think it's interesting how the Northerners in the back, later on in the trailer when we see Arya watching Drogon arrive, the Northerners look pretty freaked out. In the montage earlier from Bran saying, "Everything you did brought you here, where you belong," right as Bran says home, Jon and Daenerys have officially arrived in the north, and then we get a cut shot of Sansa watching the dragons arrive in Winterfell. I'm glad Jon and Daenerys decided to arrive on horseback, because this is what Jon mentions to them in season 7 episode 7. It would look the best if they rode together side by side on horseback and not Daenerys arriving straight there with their dragons. This would give the appearance more to the north that they are an alliance, they are a union, and Daenerys is there to aid them in the great wars to come. Not gonna lie, I was a little disappointed that Jon and Daenerys didn't arrive on dragonback together, but later on in the trailer we get a shot of what is potentially them walking up to a dragon. I'm gonna talk about that here in a second. After the shot of Sansa arriving, watching Drogon and Viserion arrive in Winterfell, we get a shot of Jon and Daenerys down in the crypts. Now, Jon hasn't buried any Starks last season, so in my opinion, the main reason of him going down there is for self-reflection and thinking. The last time he was down there to do it, Littlefinger showed up and he didn't actually get the peace of mind. Well, this time we watched Daenerys walk in behind him. Now, I could be wrong in my logic here, but I feel like every single second from this trailer is from the very first 2 episodes. Now, you're probably like, dude, there's clearly a battle sequence there. Well, who's to say that the battle for episode 3 doesn't start at the end of episode 2? We do know that the Golden Company will most likely be arriving in the very first episode. The very first scene, or very first few scenes we see of Cersei in episode 1 are going to be of Euron and the Golden Company arriving. Otherwise, there's not much more of a story there, other than Cersei being alone and sort of hanging out with Qyburn in the mountain. The main storyline there is Euron showing up with the Golden Company and allowing Cersei to do more evil things. But if that's correct, and most of these shots are from the first 2 episodes, and that leak is correct in how Jon Snow finds out about his parentage, well, this could be after he finds out about it, and maybe he goes down and stands in front of this statue because that's not his aunt, that's his mother. You know, Jon's narrating how their enemies don't take breath, so the trailer would have you believe that he's giving Daenerys a speech like, you know, we really need to prepare ourselves for the dead, this is the last straw, we can't rest because our enemies never rest. But myself and most of you guys watching know that you can't trust these trailers, they tend to be misleading. This could be Daenerys walking up to Jon to comfort him, like, look, you may not be who you thought you were, you're actually my nephew, that doesn't mean we still can't continue to save Westeros from the threat of the undead. Now, there is another possibility for what's going on here, and the reason why Jon looks so distraught and maybe even more so concerned than he did last season, and that could be what happened in season 7 episode 7. Boat sex coming back up, and maybe Daenerys just found out she's pregnant. Maybe Daenerys just told Jon Snow he's pregnant, and at the same time, Jon just found out that he's a Targaryen, and Daenerys is technically his aunt. And right after that scene with Jon being embraced by Daenerys in the crypts of Winterfell, Jon says our enemy doesn't stop, doesn't tire. Right as they say that, we hear a hammer hitting the anvil, and your boy Gendry Baratheon shows up. Now, there haven't been too many leaks about Gendry, but some of the ones that have included him doing things like making armor for the dragons. There was a leak that I was sent a few weeks ago that stated that Gendry would not necessarily make armor for the dragons, but more like an undercarriage that's attached to a saddle. This thing will wrap around the dragon's chest and will cover certain crucial joints that are more likely to be pierced by the Night King's spear. Supposedly, this was going to be made out of Valyrian steel. We get a few shots of Jorah inside Winterfell, Missandei kissing Grey Worm, and then Jaime fighting on the barracks, which is clearly inside Winterfell. Now, I don't want to recover those leaks, because this will literally be the 3rd or 4th video in a row that I've talked about them, but I've actually covered a insanely detailed leak involving Jaime Lannister and Arya during the Battle of Winterfell. Now, I've conveniently linked that video down below in the description, and if you want to know some inside information that may potentially be correct, go and check the link down below in the description and go and watch that video. And then getting back to the trailer here, right as Jon says our enemy doesn't feel, we get to see, you know, Cersei pausing. Well, this is after that kiss of Missandei and Grey Worm, but we get to see Cersei holding a goblet of wine, and she starts crying. Right before that, there's a bit of a split scene where we don't really know what's going on. We can clearly see that it's Cersei on the Iron Throne. That's the mountain to her right, and then in front of her is the Golden Company leader, Harry Strickland, and then Euron. Whatever happens in that scene, the trailer's making us lead to believe that that causes Cersei to cry, but the way that Cersei's crying in this short glimpse of a scene, there's something different about it. Cersei looks dressed down, and she looks as though she just found out that maybe Jaime Lannister has died. And if you're wondering why I suggest that, well then, spoiler alert, Nikolaj Coster-Waldau signed a contract to only be in the final 4 episodes of the last season of Game of Thrones. He may appear in the last 2 episodes, but as of right now, there's rumors that he will only appear in 4, which is why I think this may be Cersei crying at finding out the news of Jaime's death. And it doesn't help that the way the trailer lined it all up, we see Jaime fighting in a fiery battle, and that sort of alludes to his death, but we do know this is the final season, and some of the most beloved characters will be dying. And then we'll just run through some of the last few shots of the trailer before I talk about my favorite moment in the trailer, and will possibly become my favorite moment in Game of Thrones ever. First up, we get a beautiful shot of the dragons flying in the north. We get to see them in a heavily wooded environment, and then also an environment that looks similar to when they went beyond the wall last season. Then we get a rehash of the teaser they released a few weeks ago, which was Arya sneaking out to Wintertown and watching Daenerys and Jon Snow arrive. This is her reacting to Drogon. We get that shot of Jon Snow staring at the weirwood tree, which I already mentioned earlier in this video, and I personally feel like these are the moments after Jon Snow's found out his lineage and he's walking out to the weirwood tree to sort of just kind of sit there and wonder why. Maybe he's thinking about Ned. Maybe there's a character or a scene that happens right before this that makes him think about Ned, and he goes out there and we get sort of a situation with Daenerys and Jon that we had with Catelyn and Ned from season 1. Right as all these few scenes are going on, we get a voiceover from Jaime saying, "I made a promise to fight the dead, and I intend to keep that promise." It's not clear who he's saying this to, but it's pretty obvious in my opinion. If most of these clips are from the first, let's say, half of the season, or the first part of the season rather, then this is Jaime explaining to the people at Winterfell why he's arrived. Maybe he's being questioned by Sansa, Daenerys, or Arya, and he wants to further explain why he's there. And then, right before my favorite scene, we get a very muddled, it's not clear because the shot is at nighttime and there's heavy snow in the background, but it appears to be Jon Snow leading a group of men towards a door, or maybe an entrance to the crypts of Winterfell. What's interesting is that they're running, so this means they're being chased by the dead. What's interesting is if you go back and look at the history of the crypts of Winterfell, they're said to keep the old kings of winter at bay, to keep the old dead spirits at rest. A lot of people in the fandom translated this to there must be some sort of magic down there that wards off evil. Is it possible that Jon Snow and the rest of the survivors forced themselves into the crypts because they know that the Night King can't enter down there? Maybe they're told this by Bran Stark. And right after that, my favorite scene in the trailer happens. It's Jon and Daenerys walking slow-mo style up to Drogon and Rhaegal. And when you look at this image, you can clearly see the differences between the two sizes of the dragons. Now, I learned my lesson last year with Tyrion walking up to the cliff in the season 7 trailer. I thought, oh shit, he's about to go mount a dragon. I learned my lesson with that. No, he wasn't. He was watching Daenerys take off for the Field of Fire 2.0, which is actually something he advised her to not go do. When you look at this image from the season 8 trailer, this looks an awfully lot similar, like Jon and Daenerys are about to go mount dragons. Is this going to happen in this scene? Well, this is certainly what the trailer would leave you to believe. What's a little bit, sort of disheartening about this whole thing is that Jon and Daenerys both look like they haven't seen battle yet for this season. So this looks as though this may be from the very first scenes with them in episode 1 and right before they arrive in Winterfell. Maybe Daenerys is going up to let her dragons know it's time for them to leave. What's interesting is that there's a pile of bones and ash right in front of them, so you would think they've been there for a little while. The last time we saw Drogon like this, he had just finished eating. Even if Jon Snow and Daenerys don't both mount a dragon at this time, we know Daenerys will next season because she's already done it, and that's not that big of a shock. But this could be a scene that's leading up to that. Maybe later on in the season, since Jon and Rhaegal have been officially introduced and the dragon is kind of bowing, maybe this is that sort of setup for it. So that way when Jon does jump on Rhaegal out of dire need, it won't seem like such a far stretch because him and Rhaegal would have bonded the same way him and Drogon did. And I'll move on because I feel like I can talk about this scene for the next 20 minutes. And after that scene in the trailer, we get a shot of Arya whipping around that stick like I mentioned earlier. She's clearly on the barracks of Winterfell, and this is right before, most likely, she starts getting chased down the hallway, which was the opening shot of the trailer. And after that, which is, to be expected, there's a little bit of foreshadowing to Tyrion dying by dragonfire. We see Tyrion looking up sort of strangely at something, and then right after that, we cut to Drogon burning fire. Obviously, there has been a massive leak, in air quotations there, that Tyrion will betray Daenerys, and this season actually ends with him having a trial. Now, if you want to know more on that video, some of my own recent thoughts on it, check the link down below in the description. I just did a video the other day talking about this. Now, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it in this video because that's clearly what they're trying to do in this. Tyrion is very much absent in this trailer, and the one shot we get of him is surrounded by dragonfire. They're playing with our emotions, and I'm not going to let them do it. Not with me, anyway. Then, we get to the very last scene of this Season 8 trailer. Cool, calm wind sweeps over the entire crowd. We then see Pod, Jorah, and Brienne all staring off, waiting for something. We see the forces of Winterfell behind them, and that cool wind that follows the Night King pops up. Then, a dead horse's hoof shows up. And then the trailer cuts to black, reminding us all that April 14th, Game of Thrones will be back and our lives can begin again. I feel like I've pretty much covered everything that I feel like needs to be mentioned from this trailer. Now, of course, I will be doing multiple videos on this trailer in and of its entirety, probably like 6 total. The very next video that I'm going to be making about this trailer will be going through every single leak I've ever been sent and comparing it with any kind of information we have in this trailer. So please, slap a like on this video and make sure you're subscribed to turn your notifications on so that way you'll get alerted the next time I drop this video. This has been an excruciatingly long wait, and today begins the day of the end of the long night. This trailer was amazing, and to be honest, I give it an 11 out of 10. Of course, like the rest of us, I do wish we could have gotten to see a little bit more, but this is perfect. This builds the hype and feeds our appetite, at least until the show comes out. Alright, and with that being said, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could, please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be, you know what, this is the trailer, let's switch it up a little bit, 2,420. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then most important part, make sure you have notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this near ending long night. Super special shout out to every single person watching this video, and a special thank you to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunts Reviews.